All right, this is always my favorite when I welcome a fellow Canadian to the Leaders Who Care series. Welcome, Calgary. I mean, welcome, Kyle, to the
Yeah.
Leaders Who Care series.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Happy to be here.
Hey,
Yeah, thrilled.
you got to put the A in there and the about and all that
Yeah.
stuff. We got to promote, man. Um, yeah, I'm excited to see you again after seeing you in Toronto at the Forum for Impact event, which was cool, and I love what you're doing. It's important stuff, and I already know, but now we'll share with the audience why you really are do deserve to be on a Leader Who Cares type of series. So can you keyword here is briefly introduce yourself. And I say that more for men than anybody because men right immediately go to, well, this is my title and this is what I do. But that's not the question. The question is, tell us a little bit about where you're from originally, where you are now, which I kind of gave away. What you feel comfortable talking about your family a little bit, maybe something you've never told anybody in the world, and this is the time you want to reveal it. That's always fun. Stuff like that. Can you share a little bit about Kyle?
Yeah, you bet. My name's Kyle. I'm a member of the Métis Nation of Alberta. Métis people are one of three Indigenous groups here in Canada, alongside First Nations and Inuit. Family ties back to a once thriving Métis community of St. Paul, but I actually just grew up in a community just east of Calgary called Chestermere.
Hmm.
But currently residing in Calgary with my wife Kelsey and our dog Augie. And yeah, in this place right now, I work for the Metis Settlements Development Corporation here in Alberta.
How old's Augie?
He's about 3 years old. We don't know. He's a rescue, kind of German Shepherd Border Collie mix. We did one of those DNA tests, and he was like 15 breeds, so he's like fifth generation field dog, basically.
He got around, or so did the ancestors did anyway.
Yeah.
Is he there?
Yeah, he's out in the other room. He doesn't really come into the office too much.
No. Dad told him, don't come in the office when I'm talking.
I know he's got a bed here, actually. He just doesn't use it.
That's cool. So, well, speaking about how old and stuff, what were you like as a kid and a teenager? Were you like, I don't know if you remember Michael J. Fox on Family Ties? Did you mention that? Or were you doing sports, music, tech? What were you up to?
Yeah, actually, a bit of everything. So growing up in Chestermere, it was a small town, about 2,000 people when I grew up. Kind of like a everybody knows everybody community. Grew up playing a lot of sports, soccer, hockey. My first love was golf. We grew up on the golf course in the small community. And then ended up actually being a basketball player. I was born into a family of strong athletes. Both my parents were all Canadian basketball players at U of A and U of L in Alberta here. But yeah, I think just overall playing both individual and team sports at a high level really shaped a lot of what I do today and how I perceive effort and discipline and accountability and perhaps leadership. That
Perhaps
said, our
leadership? Is that what you just
entrepreneurship
said?
also started at a young age.
You said perhaps leadership?
Yeah. But also I really love creative ventures. I played music, played saxophone in high school band, learned to play guitar in high school, and now kind of carry that on in a passion for bedroom music production and DJing as well.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. There's movies about, where they go into the indigenous communities and there's basketball teams there and obviously hockey teams there. There's some pretty good movies about stuff like that. So you're not like Mystery Alaska though, right? Did you ever see that?
No, certainly not.
One thing I know you did starting your initial career early on was you founded a property maintenance company, which became pretty significant, right?
Yeah, it's true. So it's a funny story. It started at a young age. I was 10 years old and I wanted a set of golf clubs. And my dad said, well, how about this? This winter, you go out every time it snows and knock on some neighbors' doors and shovel their driveways. Come spring, we'll make sure you get a set of golf clubs. And so that was, the first winter. Just go and try and earn it yourself. And then actually, when my grandfather passed away, on my dad's side, my grandma asked me to mow the lawn. And so we actually traded the lawnmower for the work. And that's where the kind of the summer lawn mowing business started. I would strap on my rollerblades every spring or every fall and go door to door dropping off flyers. And then I would follow up a week later to see if anybody was interested. By 16 years old, had a truck, a trailer, and actually had hired a few of my friends to help get the work done. By the time I was in university, we had 80 plus clients, several tractors, leaf blowers, lawnmowers, and really just a steady business that put me through business school. And uniquely, the business still runs today, almost 30, 25 years later, where my sister and my niece and nephew are carrying it on to the next generation.
That's amazing, actually. But isn't that great? That's what we used to do, like back then. You had summer jobs and you did stuff. I like the fact that your father started the incentive-based compensation plan with you.
Yeah, certainly.
It's all a great education, and you don't see it as much anymore, do you? I don't know where you are, but we were all looking for summer jobs. We were all looking for stuff to do like that.
Mhm. Well, yeah, so in terms of education, I mean, I think I, at a young age, always had a natural curiosity for the markets, stocks, commodities, and global trade. And in Calgary here, energy is a major driver. So that was a bit of a natural focus. Had family friends that worked in gas trading and, in exploration and production. So as part of that, I naturally decided that I wanted to go into finance. Uh, really, it felt a lot like sports. It's fast-paced, it's competitive, it's performance-driven. And, initially my goal was just to get a career in capital markets and investing. And in my early career, really focused on just learning. I started my CFA studies in my last year of university as kind of a differentiator opportunity, but also really interested in kind of that competition and achievement. I wasn't really thinking about impact at the time. That came a little bit later.
Right.
I think when after several years into my career, went and did an MBA, which was kind of the start of a career pivot where I wanted to get closer to the investments and, influence decisions and people really. So I kind of used that opportunity to challenge myself to think differently, maybe a little bit more creatively and learn new skills and expand my network.
No, yeah, I noticed you got your bachelor's in finance and your MBA. Were you envisioning joining an investment bank? Were you envisioning what were you thinking?
Yeah, I think, in undergrad, nobody really knows the jobs that are out there. I think one thing that I've done to students when I talk to them is like, these are all of the opportunities that you can do or look at from a finance perspective. When you're young, you're like, investment banking, let's work hard, let's learn a lot. Um, and so I certainly thought that that was an option, but I didn't actually end up going that route. And I think I'm fortunate to not have quite gone through the stress of that particular path.
Yeah, it's yeah, there's stress. There's no doubt about it. Well, our firm, Fifth Element, we're based a lot on talent and leadership as well as impact and using tech as resource, as a tool to make that happen. Um, I know early in your career, were there any experiences or I guess you'd call it inflection points that stand out for you? And you had investment in sales analysis jobs, and then it led you to wealth management, which also led you to advanced, managing I think it was $1 billion portfolio.
Yeah.
Um, what experiences, what inflection points, what happened that stands out for you that you think made a biggest impact?
Yeah, so actually coming out of university, I started in energy analysis and deal review. 2014, 15 was a tough market actually with in the energy space. So not a lot was happening in Calgary. So I actually quickly pivoted and joined a quant fintech company called SIA Charts. It was
Hmm.
an investment analysis platform for asset managers and advisors. Had a sister company that was an asset manager that utilized that technology. And given I was working on the CFA at the time, I kind of sat between technology and product, data
Hmm.
analytics, and global investment and investment management. I was fortunate enough for the early trust in my senior leaders at that time that gave me a pathway to work up to become a portfolio manager. And by the time I kind of finished there, about halfway through my time, I became the head of portfolio management. And I think,
Yeah.
that was a natural progression. I think a real unique inflection point did come, though, when I was doing MBA studies. I took some leadership courses and some systems thinking courses, and that really challenged my perspective on my purpose in capital markets and how can capital create impact. And that really sparked my desire to use finance for something deeper, which really led to the opportunity that I'm at today.
Well, good. Thanks for giving me that segue. So, what was the passion? What was the reason to become the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer at the Metis Settlements Development Corp? And if you could, longer question, if you can share why it is so important and what are the challenges, but also mostly what are the opportunities to make both an economic and social and environmental impact?
Yeah, I think to the first part of that, in part, it was a bit of the right place, right time. I've been following MSDC's work and had a conversation with Barbara, our CEO. And when the CIO opportunity came up, I certainly put my name in the hat as being really thrilled to be a part of what she was building at the time. I have a really proud Métis heritage. I have family ties back to the Red River, which is now in Manitoba. My grandfather was a residential school survivor. So I'm really doing this out of building on his legacy and his struggles. On my Métis side, I'm the oldest of 12 cousins. And I think we all have a bit of a shared responsibility and leadership that we want to continue to move forward. I have a sister who's in education with a focus on Indigenous studies in the master's school right now, a cousin in social work who's also involved with Indigenous families and support. And so for me, it felt like a really good opportunity to apply my skills and experience into something that can also have community benefit. Um, I think there's a huge opportunity right now to support Indigenous participation in the private markets, historically overlooked area that communities have not been able to participate in. For us specifically, we have a few focus sectors in climate and energy transition, agriculture and food security, and health equity. And really, what our goal is, or what my goal is, to show that impact and performance can actually coexist.
Well, welcome to my club too. I think they even go beyond coexist. I think they actually benefit each other and are necessary for each other. And I remember so long a time, you either just made money and you had to go for it, or you didn't make money but you tried to make a difference. You had to be poor to make a difference,
Mhm.
and so on. And I even turned down my dream job to work for a pro hockey team to take on a job at a nonprofit. That's how I got to the States. That was way less money. And the only person that told me to take the job with the less money was the president of the pro hockey team that offered me the other job.
Oh,
And
really?
and he said it's not about the money right now. They should pay you more, but it's not. It's about the relationships, the opportunities, the people you meet. They're going to make the difference. But that taught me also that they should be able to go together. It's actually good for business to go to, and do that type of stuff and whatnot.
Mhm.
Do you find, I want to get a little more into how you advance impact over there, but I wanted to also ask you, especially when you said your grandfather was part of that history with residential housing, and there's been some good movies out about it with I think educated people and stuff that they didn't even know about. And I think as Canadians, happened in the US too, we're kind of embarrassed by it, because that's not who we think we are, type of thing or something. So two parts, I guess, is how did the impact what was the impact of in your communities when people started knowing more about what really happened in that time? Let's start with that one briefly.
Yeah, I think, well, one, I guess I'll caveat, like I didn't actually grow up in community. For my family, my grandfather actually moved to Edmonton, and my mom and her brothers and sisters grew up in Edmonton, and it was not a really great time to be proud Indigenous. And so we had almost our indigeneity skipped a generation. And so it was my grandfather, and then it was kind of his life's passion to have all of his grandkids know about our history, our shared history, um, and so it's been a bit eye-opening even for myself because I'm going through my own reconciliation journey of not growing up in community, but now trying to work for and in the right way with community.
Hmm.
But to your question more specifically, I think, over the last, 5 years, as it's become more real about the history of residential schools and Indigenous people, I think society has opened their eyes a little bit to those generational impacts, but also have opened up to having some sort of collective responsibility to reconcile that. And you're seeing it in public perception, and you're seeing it in policy, and certainly the pendulum will swing over time to where it's more of a focus and less of a focus. And I think maybe right now it's a bit less of a focus, but not lost on hope that it still remains at least part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you want to earn what you want to earn stuff for who you are, but that doesn't mean you forget what happened, type of thing.
Mhm.
So that's my layman term way of putting it. We should never forget, but we should also not be victims of things like that. And people want to be hired and do things and accomplish things for who they are, remembering the tradition and the history of that's behind. Yeah, there's a couple of movies about hockey and all sorts of stuff that showed a lot of stuff that I think people didn't know, and sometimes that's a good way to get people educated to know what
Mhm.
went on. With respect to impact, some more. How are you advancing Indigenous equity in some of the key sectors you talked about: energy transition, clean tech, ag, healthcare, infrastructure? That pretty well covers the world. I mean, but tell us what we should know, speaking of what people should know, and what can people possibly do to support?
Well, uniquely, we've launched the first community-owned impact fund in Canada. We're Métis-led and community-owned. And when we were building it out, we really started it with an outcomes-focused lens, trying to tackle challenges that Indigenous people face across Turtle Island and North America with a primary focus here in Canada. In climate, Indigenous communities are 18 times more likely to be evacuated by wildfires. It's due to infrastructure and location. When it comes to food, short growing seasons, high food costs, limited access to healthy food, really leading to worse outcomes almost across the board. In health, again, limited infrastructure in remote communities, leading to things like shorter life expectancy, addictions, major mental health gaps. And so we're really looking at, climate tech solutions, food solutions, and health solutions as a big opportunity to bridge access and try to close that gap with the lens of improving outcomes for Indigenous people all over the country. And
Right.
now, in infrastructure and major projects, no project should proceed without Indigenous participation anymore. I think aligning community and industry interests is better for everyone and can create, win-win scenarios. And really just understanding that relationships and trust are, the foundation for success in these partnerships between industry and community with, adherence to things like the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, and free, prior, and informed consent within projects.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see, for example, like at the conference we were at, the CIBC, kind of leading the way on funds that are available and impact to be made. And but I also see something interesting because with AI coming on strong and a lot of people being laid off and new things happening and this and that, a lot of people are talking about, and it might be true that AI might be the technology, despite all that, that finally makes us happy in a way. And because part of that will be people being laid off, but maybe corporate leaders, business leaders who care, if you will, realize it's economically viable to have people maybe even laid off, paid a salary to get back to basics of helping communities all over the place, including Indigenous. And to me, it goes back to the way it was way back when every town had a center. Everybody came to the center of town and talked about stuff and everything. And I'm hopeful that the business leaders will start doing stuff like that, where instead of paying for unemployment of people and not having enough health care and everything bad that goes along with that in any community, maybe pay people that are allocated to their own communities to make the community better in so many things that are needed rather than the government doing it. So I kind of like the fact of a back to basics thing, back to communities thing that you're talking about. Speaking of AI, the fourth industrial revolution, they've basically nailed it. It's AI and other
Mhm.
tech. But they say the fifth is about humanity. AI is coming on fast and furious. What does that mean now and ahead for the Métis tribe, not tribe, sorry, but for the Métis community? And what's the vision and mission with AI doing that?
Yeah, it's here to stay. I think, there's kind of two sides to it. I think AI can be a massive equalizer if used intentionally. Applications in our focus sectors specifically, can I think create a lot of value. Thinking about energy transition and optimizing grids or emissions tracking or deployment of circular economy concepts and say energy and food and cogeneration. Think in agriculture, looking at smart growing and controlled environment agriculture or food distribution technologies can really be optimized through the use of AI. In health, looking at diagnostics and medical devices,
Yeah.
I think can really bridge the rural gap that you see across Indigenous communities. But I also think AI inside, just almost at the investment level, not necessarily looking at the sectors, but I think it can augment teams for analysis and impact measurement. AI literacy is, going to become table stakes for augmenting work and efficiency. So what that does, I think it frees up time for relationships and strategic work. And so for us, we're really looking at a goal is to bring Indigenous capital up to institutional standards, really without, say, losing those values. Um, However, capacity remains a major challenge in communities. So I think it's something that we need to start thinking about right now, if it's not too late, and thinking of how we can upskill and implement capacity and AI capacity within communities in order to not be left behind, even further on this next wave. And like specifically for us, our mission is just advance prosperity for that and the economic interests of Métis settlements in Alberta. But our broader role is, being stewards of capital for Indigenous people, economic sovereignty, shared opportunity, signaling to the broader institutional market that opportunities for investment in, say, impact funds like ours or other Indigenous focused funds are existing, and I think we're growing.
Is the mindset there or the education there or both there for younger people and even people that need to be upskilled, reskilled, whatever you want to call it, to take that on?
I think it's not even just an Indigenous specific issue. I think everybody needs to be aware of
Sure.
how to take advantage of AI. I do think that the gap maybe is a little bit further within the Indigenous communities, but it starts at a young age. Curiosity, education, building things. Um, and so I don't have the answers, but that's just kind of my initial thoughts is, you got to start them young with the curiosity.
Yeah, you do, and we've got if you get them at a time when we haven't screwed them up yet, they're open to doing everything and anything. Nothing stands in their way, which is fantastic. There's I don't know if I mentioned it to you. There's a program one of the founders is from Canada, called Nonflict. And Nonflict is being taught now. Nonflict has agreements with 4 or 5 major youth organizations around the world. And it's a workshop basically that coaches people that conflict is actually a good idea. It just means different ideas, not
Hmm.
something you hate somebody over. And it teaches active listening, not a new concept, but really how to be an active listener and then getting to a solution to be able to work together. And with these organizations, they're going to be training 100 million youth by 2030 and 250 million youth by 2035. It's been found that conflict is one of the big reasons that startups fail. Conflict between founders and investors, families, the whole bit. And so that's millions of young people being trained. It might be interesting resource to have in your toolbox.
Yeah, I'd certainly be curious in learning more. I think it's true. We've uh, tried not to be polarizing, but being able to share conflicting views in a productive way is maybe a skill that's becoming a little bit lost across humanity, let's say altogether. But
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. So, it's actually a good idea to have different ideas. Without different ideas, what do we got, right?
that's innovation, where innovation comes from.
Yeah. So I'd be happy to introduce you if you're interested. But it's a great foundation to get things done because if you're always in argument, what happens? So, you
Mhm.
know, well, I have one last question because, in LA, we say that if you don't leave them wanting more, well, you got to leave them wanting more. So there's a sequel. So, might have to do a sequel. But a friend of mine who was a client actually told me in 2021, he said about the year 2020, the pandemic year, he said, it was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought, interesting comment. And I do know a lot of people sometimes feel like COVID was yesterday and years ago, all at the same
Mhm.
time. It's crazy. With that said, we're already at the end of 2025, which is also amazing. What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Yeah, in terms of being grateful, it for me is just my family support and their trust. They've been the foundation for everything from, being a kid to my wife at home. I really couldn't do this work without their patience and their encouragement and always just challenging me and being there to listen when things are, getting a little bit tough. Uh, and then, things I'm hopeful for. I think, as I alluded to earlier, eyes are opening to the Indigenous economy and the Indigenous investment space. I think new partnerships, new ideas, and capital is flowing into areas that have been previously ignored. I think that there's a captive audience, much like the FFI conference, people that are ready to listen and learn, and that momentum is building. And I just hope that others will keep building on the work that we're trying to do and pushing economic reconciliation through action and investment.
That's great. Well, I think that hope is hopefully getting closer, type of
Mhm.
thing. And well, I'm grateful I have a new friend. I'll tell you that. So that's cool. Even though you're a Flames fan, but not everybody's perfect. And and you are a leader who cares, doing what you're doing, which is important. And that's what I'm hopeful for also, that you and more people, are also leaders who care because we need to. And guess what? You can care in business. It's a good thing to do. So thanks for being that, and thanks for being on our series. I really appreciate it.
No, Mark, it was fantastic meeting you recently, and we've had some awesome conversations. This is just another one of them. So, thanks for having me.
It's not just another one of them; it's an important one of them.
Yes.
Thanks, man.
Mhm.